I think
she was remembered.
Yeah, now Belgium is getting very
Yeah, I don't know what the last question was from. And they disengaged funds. Our debt minister, prime minister was like, well, he like jumped in and was like, well, you don't want to fund anything that's really sexual. And I was like, you take some money out, we'll cover all this. We got quite a bit of recognition for that.
It's very feminist. They get time to publish.
now.
Yeah, it's
How about the king?
This is our big brother. We were in the trenches.
Welcome. This is your home. This is your family. We are privileged and honored to have Elaine with us. Elaine is a very long time friend and a family member of the Revolution. In her we trust and we appreciated her work since when she was at the AU, and I think that's when I came to meet personally Elaine. We worked very closely with her on gender issues. I think she was the backbone of the entire African group that we all appreciated. When she moved to the UN Women, she was still with us, and I believe we also accompanied you in the UN Women, but at all times she was very accessible, which we really appreciated. Now, when she authored, well, I think I was one of the first person to send her my congratulations when it came out. I had not had a chance to read the book, I must confess, until because I wanted the one autographed by her. Now I have it with me, but we're really honored and privileged to have this small guest here with us. I know you'll be traveling to Rwanda soon. The Kigalians are waiting for you. She's very wonderful in this book, and we look forward to having you in Rwanda as well. We wish you the very best in life because we think the future holds a lot for us all, and we have again to see that we're going to be hearing from you, and again welcome. We'll have some drinks, some eats. I am hungry, I am thirsty, so I don't know what is in there, but I think they are nice stuff. Samantha, thank you again for putting everything. Flavia is one of our colleagues, follows gender portfolio, and probably she will have to meet with Elaine later, and then somebody sitting next to you.
Tulu.
Yes, you will have to meet. But again, colleagues, thank you very much. Maybe we can start as we wait for other colleagues to come. Yes. Some of them were telling me they are going to be, later a bit full. Yes. Maybe they are following other things. But over to you to take us through. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I'll let our sister Monica lead the conversation, but of course, as we know, we're all pretty much UN and diplomatic staff here, so we know that we have negotiations and very hard documents to go through, the comma and the words, so we appreciate, of course, everyone who took the time to be here today, and we appreciate people who are arriving. And of course, Monica, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Verlaine, and I would like to just double check that everybody can hear us clearly. I'm very honored to be here, and good evening, everyone. I would like to thank you, His Excellency Ambassador Robert Kayinamura, for his kind words in the beginning. Also to thank Verlaine and Samantha for joining me in this panel. We are here to celebrate Ambal today. To this book signing, and we were talking yesterday, this is really a modern world. I think it's the first time that a book comes out of tweets, right? These are the times we are living in. We have many journalists here, and I have to say hello to my fellow journalists, colleagues, fellow writers as well, excellencies and friends. I really would like to welcome you all to this beautiful evening. I'm very honored to be here, as I said, and also thank again for the hosting us, the mission of Rwanda. And I see some familiar faces from work as well. But I have to say from the very beginning as a disclaimer that today I'm here in my individual personal capacity, not in my representing the organization. And I'm very happy to be here and to have these two wonderful ladies to discuss some topics that I would like to bring to you today. We are going to have a very brief discussion about the power of communications in today's world. Samantha and Verlaine will say some words, and of course we will open also for questions after we had this introduction. I read Unbound, and I have to say that I am really happy and privileged to have this book. It's a wonderful book, it's a beautiful book. It makes you think, and it makes you reflect about life. It's not a coincidence, I would say, with the author here. I dare to say, of course, we have to check with her, that was written between the pandemic as well. So when I think all of us were thinking and had the time to reflect a little bit about life, about what really counts in life, the purpose of life, as they say. And what I really like about Verlaine's writing and this beautiful book is that Verlaine talks about love. I like this. I think it's very important. I would say to the ones who have the chance to get the book afterwards, in page 167, she says, put love and compassion at the center of who you are and what you do. Compassion and empathy. 2 words, when put into action, can change the world. And today we are going to talk about change. So, without further ado, I would say, I would like to introduce to you, and I would like all of us to welcome her today, our author tonight, Verlaine Diane Subredu. And on my right, we have Samantha Teta. Thank you very much. So, I would like to start asking a question, and feel free, both of you, to answer. How have new technologies and also new forms of communication impacted the work that both of you do in international, but also in your national capacity? And how would you say that these changing communications nowadays are changing the way we relate to each other? Verlaine, perhaps I will start with you.
Thank you so much, Monica. I have to say, we're talking with practitioners here. You know, we're all pretty much practitioners of international development, peace, security, gender, etc. And I think we've seen the shift that has happened, particularly in the past 5 to 10 years when it comes to communication. I think communication is at the heart of the human experience as a community, as a collective. The fact that if we're blessed enough to have vision, that we can look into each other's eyes and communicate through that we can communicate through our body languages, that we can communicate now with words. And the fact that as humans we've connected and communicated with words and all those different elements of the human experience for a long time. Has always been part of our identity. It's just there's been such a significant shift in the last 10 to 15 years with social media, where the scale is so much bigger. The platform is so much bigger, the scale is so much bigger, and the impact is also so much bigger. And both on the positive and on the negative side, unfortunately. When you look at, we are all very familiar with, extreme movements that are also using social media for, advancing messages. How do we rebalance that? And I think the way that I have personally, and then of course through work, or rather Robert mentioned the work we did around gender with the African group at the UN, through the African Union, and then with UN Women, and of course my colleagues Edward and Tolu have been part of the journey at UN Women, has been to having ownership and using words in an efficient way, in a way that would impact people, in a way that we can redefine the narrative, particularly around women's leadership, around youth leadership, and then around our own personal identities, and communicating with others. So I think for me, on a personal level, it's been a tremendous part of both my personal, book is here, and professional journey. Yeah.
And how about you, Samantha?
Hi, thank you. First of all, I'll apologize because of the technical difficulties that we don't have microphones. But as women, we're very capable, and we will project tonight. So thank you for bearing with us. Really, in terms of technology, when I was younger, I loved radio a lot, and it was a big thing in Rwanda. We would just all sit around in the evening and listen to radio. There were so many shows back in the day. What was happening then is that we were taking in information and stories, and it was beautiful. But what social media and new technologies have done is they've given us the ability to tell as well. So we're no longer just listening, we're also telling stories, which is so powerful because we're telling each other. And I don't have to wait for a certain program at 6 p.m. Now I can just log onto Twitter and there's stories everywhere. And I think that's been so incredible. And it's not just for social aspect, it's also politically. Because now, I love the saying that don't decide for me without me. We're so kind of accustomed to people sitting in a room somewhere, we have no idea what's happening, and then there's policy, that's how policy was made. But now when you make policy, you will know what people think. They're gonna tell you because there's all these mediums. So now we have people saying, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is how this affects me from every angle, from social affairs to political affairs to economic affairs. We know how people are doing. We know when they're happy, when they're not happy. We've seen protests led through all this new media. So there's, I think storytelling is such a powerful thing, and the way we're learning about each other, and it's taken away a lot of the geographical barriers. So I find it personally extremely inspiring, but also extremely informative, especially in the field we're in, and especially I'm particularly happy to the impact that has in accessibility, especially for marginalized communities.
Yeah, you're talking about empowering. This is a very interesting point. At the same time, Berlin was touching upon also the challenges that social media or the new ways of communicating nowadays bring. Let's talk about women. It's empowering, but it's also many women, especially in politics, also have noticed that they are being attacked online as well. So why is this happening?
Sam, do you want to go first? And then I'll come.
I think online shows what's happening in real life, except now we all get to see it. So women are not attacked for the first time online. They're attacked in our everyday lives, but now we get to see it and we get to respond to it. I will never forget Me Too. That moment, it was just so global. There were so many voices, and we're discussing this thing that's so pervasive in society, in everywhere imaginable. And now we're putting a spotlight on it. So I think one of the ways in which oppression succeeds is that it's under a bucket of silence, and now we're breaking the silence, if I can use that hashtag. So I'm not, it doesn't really terrify me that I see abuse online. I'm actually more like, okay, now look at that, study that, and let's respond to that, because there is no room for silencing anymore. There's no room for lack of acknowledgement. It's now on us. If you're a user, you have a responsibility, and you can't keep quiet about stuff like that. So I do not shy away from that kind of thing, because I feel like it should be confronted head on.
Thank you for that. But there are women who really hesitate, for instance, entering politics, because they say, I don't want that for my life, for my family. So.
Yes, and I think that's the main challenge. But I like what our sister Sam has mentioned. The fact that you go head on. You kind of catch the bull by the horn and try to face it. Indeed, violence against women, young people, has always been existing. That this is as old as, unfortunately, humanity. It's just now it's much more visible. We're able to also respond to it. When it comes to women in politics and the violence, it is violent. It is a violent space. Being online or being in a public, visible space for a woman is violent. The act of having a voice as a woman is conducive to receiving violence. Because people will, why is she speaking? What does she have to say? Who does she think she is? These questions unfortunately arise when a woman decides to speak, because unfortunately in the collective subconscious of a world, women are perceived to be subservient and silent. And when you even look at Greek mythology, her name is evading my spirit, but the mother of one of the king, her tongue was cut because she dared to speak in a meeting of men on political matters. And so the son, ashamed of his mother having a public voice among men, decided to cut his own mother's tongue to punish her, but also to save his own dignity as a man. And I think we're moving away from that. We can say the fact that, look at today, we have men. Our brother Edward is the head of he for she. At when women, so if you put you on the spot, everyone's going to come and talk to you at the end. But that shows also the change that is happening, and the fact that society is always evolving, and we either have to catch up to it, or we either have to mold it. And I think for women it's important to be able to mold it, to be part of the conversation on how they want to live in those societies. And coming back to the initial question, Monica, on women not wanting to join, I understand it's scary. Maybe we'll talk about that when I talk about the book, but when I was about to publish the book, people asked me that it's very transparent. Are you sure you want to publish that? Because we know you as, international blah, blah, blah practitioner. But now there's a lot of things happening in Unbound. People are going to look at you and ask you questions. And I decided not to let fear overwhelm me, because I believe that our individual experiences are the collective experiences. That my experience is no different than Flavia's experience. We may experience it in a different context. But at the end of the day, I know that Flavia and I were born that someone, maybe a mother, a brother, a sister, whoever loved that child, and that child goes through the journey of life, and that through that journey, there are different experiences that we have to encounter, that we have to overcome, that we have to nurture. And as a woman, being able to then reclaim that journey, because I think that's what it is for women in politics, it's reclaiming yourself. So finding the strength to say, okay, I'm going to get into the ring, I'm going to get beaten up and get some scratches, but I believe it's worth it. It's hard. One of my mantra or thing that I always tell myself, particularly on Twitter, is do not entertain negativity. So if there's anything negative that comes, I do not give it life. I do not entertain it. If it reaches a point where I need to address it, then I will address it. But if it's something that is it's not even a seed, it's just there, I will not entertain it. And I think that's how we move past the fear. And that's how as women we get stronger, reclaiming our voices.
No, thank you so much. Sam, would you like to say something about that?
I think I could just go in terms of how different I use social media. So I love to write very much. And so I will write on Instagram things that are a little personal that would not be on Twitter, because I feel like Twitter is such a, powerful political forum, and I don't want people to see me a certain way. And then I thought about it and I was like, this is really odd. Who teaches us to communicate like this? Because we are multidimensional people. We experience life in such a multidimensional way. So why do we feel like we have to put ourselves, especially as women, in one box to be taken seriously? Or you think that some work isn't as important as the other, which I found to be very limiting.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, how is everybody? Yeah, I can see the discussion is very intense.
Yeah.
Some things. I just came passing by to say hi.
Thank you.
For me, I live here. Yeah, I can see my deputy is there taking care. Yeah. So having a conversation.
Join us, please.
Yes. There's a chair.
Actually, maybe if I can educate me a bit in 2 minutes. Yes. I live here. My name is Cleva Gatete. I'm the ambassador and the PR here.
Your
This
Excellency.
building. Thanks so much.
No, welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much for hosting us here tonight. We were just talking about women in power. We were talking about he for she, women in politics, and all the powerful change that social media and also, but the participation of individuals so powerful nowadays to bring change. And now I'd like to really introduce the book and also to talk about this book and how it is already building positive change. Yesterday we were talking, we had a meeting about this meeting, and we just realized that we had never met before, right? We said we are meeting now through through the internet, and we will meet face to face tomorrow. And in the beginning, we were talking about these are the modern days, right? It's the first time that tweets become a book, and I think you got your place in the Guinness Book already with your book. And now, going to the second part, I would like to read another. It's the fascinating thing about this book is that not only makes you think and reflect, but also it gives you tips for life. And here's one. Appreciation. Cherishing people who surround us is a powerful way to be positive, happy, and unbound. Life is relatively short, and circumstances always change. Take a moment to cherish, value, and appreciate the people you love. So, we're now talking about love and positive change. I would like to start with you now, Samantha, if I just can. If you just could talk to us a little bit about your experience in community building. You said that you started writing when you were 12, right? So what brought you to achieve change or to promote change or to foster change through your literature, through the way you express yourselves and you build community?
I mean, when I was young, I was writing about the environment. Yes, I'm very yes, I was writing really stories about how one day animals are going to take revenge on us for damaging the environment. That was the first story I published ever. And then I grew up and grew into more political consciousness about, from environmental consciousness to, gender consciousness and that kind of thing. And I realized that I always thought that you had to create a story from scratch. And then I realized you actually just have to lend language to stories that are already there. So when I write about stuff, it's stuff that I've witnessed, it's stuff that I've heard, it's stuff that I've experienced. And then, fortunately, then I get to start to just, language is a beautiful thing, especially if you're lucky enough to speak multiple languages. I speak my mother tongue, Kinyarwanda, and then another language. It just starts to weave it and create such a world. And then that's what people, and I think that's why stories are so popular. It's because you're already seeing the truth of it because we're just writing about life, and then you just enjoy the lyricness of words and language, and then you get to benefit both from the music of language and then from the stories that we already all experience. And I think that's what made me fall in love with literature, and that's what I wanted to do, because I feel like it's all around me. Like, I feel like writers are not rich financially, yes. But they will never run out of things to say as long as there's life, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And so now turning to you, let's talk now about the inspiration for putting all these bits together and to write this book. When did aha moment came?
The aha moment. It is a haha moment, particularly because, and again, I'm speaking with fellow colleagues, diplomats and UN, practitioners. I think we get so busy every day. We get busy the day before, thinking of the day after. We get busy of the agenda setting. We get busy thinking about the people we need to meet, the coffees we need to take, the resolutions we need to go through, the commas we need to remove. All my colleagues on the 5th committee in December staying overnight to make sure that the budget goes through for the next year. And I think I personally was also trapped running through that until I realized during the pandemic, and I think that's where, the great Chinese saying that in every challenge there's an opportunity. I had to see the opportunity that was in this moment of stillness, because the world, my world before, was so busy that it was dusty and I could not see. And I think I speak about it in Unbound. I could not see. And the pandemic happened, and I'm grateful that, I'm still here, I'm still breathing, and, of course we have thoughts for all the people who are no longer here because of the pandemic. It just put the world on a moment of stillness, and the dust just disappeared. And I think that's when the haha moment happened, when I could finally see clearly what had happened, what was happening, and where I could go. And I think this is what Unbound is about. It's about just seeing, understanding the inner self, oneself, myself, why am I here doing what I'm doing? And we all share that journey, regardless of where we're sitting, regardless of our names, of our geography. You take someone in a village in Bangalore, and you take another person in Kigali, where I will be very soon, that we share the same aspirations and the same doubts and the same dreams, and we just need to reconnect with it. And so that's what happened to me. I just sat down, and as I sat, I had this haha moment and realized that I was maybe sharing a lot of poetry on Twitter. More poetry than I thought I may have had, but yeah, that's...
And I have to say that we are here today, so privileged to have this book signing with Verlaine, and but the book she will travel, she will go to Africa, and she will be in Nairobi, in Kigali, so in other places as well. Verlaine, my last question to you before we open to questions from our friends here today. This is a very personal book, right? And other authors spoke about that as well. It's not easy to open up and to be so transparent. And I believe that talking to you the other day, you just said that somebody approached you and said, "You are probably oversharing, aren't you?" Are you oversharing?
Thank you, Monica. I have to say yes and no. And I want to go back to His Excellency, and I appreciate, of course, your presence, Excellency, but also what you mentioned when we met earlier, the storytelling parts, the fact that we can find things that we love in the storytelling. And, in Africa, storytelling is a very common thing. I grew up with a father who is a storyteller. I'm sure I should have his name on the book. He would tell me, where is my name not on the book? But I think we are enveloped from an early age by storytelling, by understanding the world through not only stories that happen to us, but previous stories. And then of course we enter worlds that are maybe a bit different, that don't necessarily operate the same way, that mold us differently. And so of course I was molded differently also, and maybe in the early parts of my career to actually not share anything. If you look at my Twitter account before 3 years ago, it's of course mostly meetings, etc. Very, 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 very framed. But then I realized the responsibility that I had, not only towards myself, but also other, particularly young women and young men also who follow me, because I have quite of a significant follow on Twitter, and I realized the responsibility to share not necessarily my own little, the MTA train is late, where not those parts. The stories that link us together as human beings, remembering, because we can forget, we're on our phones daily, we type, it becomes automatic, and we forget that the person next to us is our fellow human being. How many people say hi to their neighbors in the morning when they get out? We even forget. And then from forgetfulness, it becomes easiness, because we've become so accustomed not to say hi, and then we become scared to say hi because we think that the person may not respond because we've had this relationship of just ignoring each other. Let's continue ignoring each other. And from ignorance, so we go from forgetfulness to ignorance. From ignorance, we start hating, maybe, the person did that. And from hate, as we know, because we are practitioners, we go to conflict. And to conflict, we go to wars, etc. I'm dragging that reflection, but the reason why I'm dragging the reflection is because we work here. When you go out on 43rd Street to go to the UN, the wall says that peace and wars start in the hearts of men and women. And so this is where peace actually needs to also take place. And so this responsibility that I felt within myself to just continue nurturing the positive side, because we spoke about it at the beginning, social media can be also very negative, Martin Luther King said it very rightly so, that the negative forces work around the clock. They're never tired, we're never at loss of crimes. We live in New York City, we know that crimes are very high. And so equally, it is very important, it is critical for us in that space to be aware of our time, to be aware of our energy, and to be aware of our responsibility to be the change we want to see. Not only in the papers and the programs that we're working on, but very much so in the people that we are. What type of person am I today? Not necessarily to someone who's bigger than me, but to the man who delivered the food for us to eat, to the taxi person who drove us to the meetings. What is my reaction? What is my interaction? How am I building positively? How am I contributing positively as a human being to that moment? And then we can recalibrate the challenges and the negative times that can happen. And so I hope that the more people are aware, because it's just being unaware, it's just being just not being conscious of it. Once you become aware of your responsibility towards each other, there's no way you would go intentionally hurting someone or out of your way to make sure that that person is destroyed. I believe very much so that we share that common denominator of love. We talk about love. I'm not necessarily talking about romantic love. If you have romantic love, I'm very happy, that's great. But I'm talking about the love for each other. The same way you love your family. Let's take a bit of that and let's try to love the person next to me the same way. Maybe we can learn something from each other. Maybe we go to bed a bit more complete in the evening if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, coming back to the vulnerability. If I allow myself to be a bit vulnerable, maybe my neighbor will be a bit vulnerable and maybe we can walk together.
That's fantastic. So the book is unbound, and the author is Villela and it's a labor of love, I could say, this book, right?